Yeah, hey now. Good morning, PSW staff, clients, and friends joining us for Tuesday. Welcome. Yesterday we had a great day looking at speed, right? Your film scoring assignment for the great bus jump scene, which I don't know how they did, but a lot of fun. So get the music into me by today. We'll see the results for Friday. Today, classical Tuesday. Usually that's how we like to do it around here. Talk about a composer. Last time was Benjamin Britten, 20th century composer, romantic composer, did all the wonderful children's voices and all that, great, beautiful stuff. Let's go back in time a little bit more. I like to kind of do back and forth here. Talk about one of the greatest composers of the Baroque period. And if you don't know his name, you know at least a few pieces, but one piece in particular, one of the most famous pieces that's performed every Christmas, although it's not really a Christmas, it wasn't meant for Christmas, but it's played at Christmas. So today we're going to be looking at the massive genius of George Frederick Handel. Handel was German-born Baroque composer, known for his operas and oratorios, and wrote tons of music. Oratorio is a large composition for orchestra and choir, but it's different than opera. Opera is kind of more musical theater, okay, because you have costumes and singing and an orchestra pit. Oratorio is more of a concert piece, so it's less expensive to put on, but We'll talk about his oratorios later. But one of the greatest of the Baroque period. Baroque is ornamentation, right? We have Baroque architecture, all the little ornamentations on buildings. In the music score, all the little ornamentations in the music score is the same. Baroque is all those kind of notes. Who's the most famous Baroque composer that we've talked about? Yeah, you guessed it, Frank Stallone. No, not Frank Stallone. Bad SNL reference. The most famous Baroque composer that we've talked about is Bach, right? Father of music. Okay, Handel's born the same year as Bach. Interesting, right? We're going to see if they ever crossed paths. They didn't. They never met. They wanted to, even though they grew up 80 miles apart from each other. Handel became a British citizen. He traveled a lot, so we'll talk a little bit more about his life. But during Handel's lifetime, wrote 30 oratorios, 50 operas, very tall, robust man, outgoing, loved good food, wine, and entertainment, and was a little bit more extroverted than Bach. Bach married and had all those kids. Handel didn't marry at all, didn't have any kids, but wrote probably the most famous thing we're going to look at later is the Messiah, Handel's Messiah. Everyone's heard of that piece. And we're going to listen to some of his other music. And then we're going to talk a little bit about why Bach and Handel are a little bit different, even though they were born in the same era. Aren't we having too much fun already? I know I am. Okay, so let's leave the 105 freeway. I never thought I'd say this, the 105 freeway, and let's go over to Germany. This is, Bach is born in Halle, Germany. In 1685 he's born, so like I said, the same year as Bach. So we're gonna need a timeline ASAP, because I'm serious, I'm not joking around. We need to see this. Same year, Handel lives a little bit longer than Bach, but they're born in the same year. Now we looked at Vivaldi. Vivaldi's before with the Four Seasons. He's before these guys. Still part of the Baroque, though, for sure. And then Henry Purcell, who we looked at, even before Vivaldi. Remember Monteverdi? The guy that wrote kind of the first opera? He's way before. That's Renaissance going into the Baroque. With Bach and Handel, we're in the Baroque. No questions asked. And this is before the classical period, which, who comes along? Mozart and Beethoven, right? We're simplifying this. That's the classical period. And then as we know, 19th century is romantic, right? We get Wagner, and we get all these other people, and then 20th century we get Britain and modernism and all that stuff. So okay, so we're going to stay in the Baroque period. Baroque is I think very fun music because it's very upbeat, and there's chords and there's melodies, and we're going to see that it's just very much like the same kind of pop music written today. So Handel's father did not want him to go into music. He wanted him to go into law. He was a barber and a surgeon. I don't think you can do that. Can you be a barber and a surgeon? I guess you can, but I don't know if those two are completely related. I wouldn't want somebody doing surgery on me that has to give a haircut later on in the day, but yeah, that's just me. But he longed to study music, even though his dad didn't let him. So his mother allowed him to secretly study music, and in fact was able to get a little clavichord, because this is before pianos were invented, right? A little clavichord keyboard smuggled into this tiny room in the attic. And at night, while the family was sleeping, Handel would practice on this clavichord, and this is where he learned to fall in love with music during the nighttime. But he mastered writing for the organ and oboe and violin. He became a violinist. By the time he was 10 years old, he's learning all of these instruments, and by the time he's 11 to the time he's about 16, 17, he's composing a lot for the church and cantatas and chamber music already. So he learns music, though, composition and keyboard performance and all that stuff. In Hamburg, Germany, he joined the violin section. So he's a violinist, and he's playing in the orchestra. And he's also becoming the harpsichordist. Early in 1705, he's becoming doing that. So when he goes to Italy, his music style is developing, and his fame is developing too. He was much more famous than Bach was, probably because he traveled a lot and he toured his music a lot. By 1726, he becomes a citizen. So that's why he's a German-born composer, but sometimes the English consider him their own composer, because that's kind of where he spent most of his career doing that. And he starts writing oratorios. So like I said, it's different than opera. It's kind of like a concert piece opera without the costumes and all that stuff. He had a lot of health problems, and particularly with his eye, because if you remember, Bach died of a bad eye operation. That's what got him. He lives a little bit longer than Bach, but he loses sight. He has problems, cataracts. He has problems with his left hand. He surpasses all of these illnesses, though, and he keeps writing, even though by the end he's completely blind. He dies, though, a very wealthy man in 1759 at age 74, so lives pretty long life. Never had kids, never married. Very charitable, very good guy, it sounds like. Gave a lot of his money and his assets after he left to his servants. A lot of charities, including the hospital, a big hospital. So he was very philanthropic. And in fact, Jimi Hendrix moved in next door about 230 years later to where Handel lived most of his life and died. So Hendrix is next door to him. So the biggest piece is the Messiah. That's the elephant in the room. Let's just get, the Messiah. Okay, most famous work. Maybe you've heard this piece. Hallelujah, 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 He writes this at a pretty bleak time. He owed a lot of people money, and he suffered a stroke and was complaining of all this blurred vision and had a lot of, his health was failing, even though he wasn't quite dying yet. But he was so inspired for this work, he wrote it in 3 to 4 weeks. People say maybe 24 days he wrote this whole thing. Between August and September in 1741, he writes this. Day and night. It really became his most beloved work. So he sequesters himself in London and begins to write this music using biblical texts, with the life of Jesus, but also the death and the resurrection. It's more of an Easter piece, but it's performed at Christmas time. But it made its first premiere in Dublin in 1742. So the structure it's an oratorio, but the structure kind of is like an opera. Not in dramatic form, but there's impersonations of characters, and direct speech. By the 19th century, the United States kind of said, this is going to be something that we're going to perform in December. It's weird how just kind of hundreds of years after a composer dies, either other composers or people get together and say, this is going to be our, this is going to, it's just like Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker, was a huge failure until a few years after, and people were like, okay, well, this is going to be just a Christmas piece now, and we're going to perform it every year, and that becomes tradition. So there are roughly 250,000 notes in the Messiah, which somebody did a test on, saying that that means that if there's that many notes written in the Messiah, that he probably did 10-hour work days. So if Bach and Handel are in the same time, growing up at the same time, some of their music is, if we play a lot of their music, some of it is hard to tell the difference between who's who, but for the most part, Bach is, remember we did a whole class on counterpoint, several independent lines going on at the same time, fugues and canons. That's polyphony, polyphonic music, where there's multiple melody lines at the same time. Now Handel did this too, but Bach is he's more the master of polyphony. So polyphony, so what's Handel doing more? He's doing more homophony. Homophonic music, homo meaning the same, right? And that's music where there's a primary part, where there's like a melody with supported by chords on the left hand, kind of more like what Henry Purcell was doing. Remember, Henry Purcell and some of these Baroque composers were doing bass lines, chords on the left hand, melody on the right. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, that's what we do today in pop music. Mostly all of pop music is homophonic music. So if there's jazz, film music, rock, classical music, that's kind of how I write. It's a texture where all the parts of the melodies and the harmonies also have a lot of the exact rhythm, meaning that they're all moving together. There's not all these different other lines moving on. You can have obviously there's counterpoint going on, but Handel's more of a melodic, I don't want to say melodic composer than Bach, but he's using more homophonic textures in the sense of having a song. Like, listen to this song. This is from the Messiah, and tell me it doesn't sound like perhaps a modern day pop song. chord progressions going on. He's got the movement going on, and then when the voices come in, they're singing a song, really, right? I mean, they're not. This is very song-like. We looked with Monteverdi was writing songs too, and the Baroque area is, especially very exciting because who doesn't like songs? Who doesn't like chord progressions and a melody? So he's doing that a little bit more than Bach is doing, because if you remember, Bach kind of is doing fugue contrapuntal music. So just a little flavor of Handel in the morning. Great composer, supposedly a really charitable, really great guy. Great music, and check out more. Maybe we should go see Handel's Messiah when it's performed. It's one of the best pieces of music ever written. So, but there's so much other beautiful music that Handel wrote. So hope you enjoyed that. Love you and miss you. Tomorrow's going to be a lot of fun, and that's Handel. So see you tomorrow. Okay, bye.